Hello, my name is Montoya Rivera from second semester morning shift, and this is a presentation about language systems from the subject Language Systems Grammar. Contents of this presentation: the science of language, language system, Steven Pinker, Noam Chomsky, phonology, pragmatics, grammar, what is it, grammar in meaning, types of grammar, prescriptive and descriptive. To introduce you more in this presentation, let's start with the science of language. Language is central to human life. The biblical story of the Tower of Babel reminds us that humans accomplish great things because they can exchange information about their knowledge and intentions via the medium of language. Language, moreover, is not a peculiarity of one culture, but it has been found in every society ever studied by anthropologists. There are some 6,000 languages spoken on Earth, all of them complex, and no one has ever discovered a human society that lacks complex language. For this and other reasons, Charles Darwin wrote, "Man has an instinctive tendency to speak as we see in the babble of our young children, while no child has an instinctive tendency to bake, brew, or write." What is language systems? A common contemporary definition of grammar is the underlying structure of a language that any native speaker of that language knows intuitively. The systematic description of the features of a language is also a grammar. These features are the phonology, sound, morphology, system of word formation, syntax, patterns of word arrangement, and semantics, meaning. Depending on the grammarian's approach, a grammar can be prescriptive, provide rules for correct usage, or descriptive, describe how a language is actually used. Here is a map to understand more what is a language system. A language system consists of the development, acquisition, maintenance, and use of complex systems of communication, particularly the human ability to do so. In order to study a language, it was subdivided by the structuralists into the following parts: phonology, lexis, vocabulary, and grammar. Then, the linguists classify it at three levels: phonology, morphology, and syntax. Finally, the communicative approach adds two more units: functional and situational. It is important to learn about language systems because we need to know how a language works, how it is formed and constructed. And finally, language system consists on phonology, lexis, vocabulary, grammar, morphology, syntax, functional, and situational. Who is Steven Pinker? Steven Pinker is an experimental psychologist who conducts research in visual cognition, psycholinguistics, and social relations. He grew up in Montreal and earned his BA from McGill and his PhD from Harvard. Currently Johnstone Professor of Psychology at Harvard. He has also taught at Stanford and MIT. He has won numerous prizes for his research, his teaching, and his books, including The Language Instinct, How the Mind Works, The Blank Slate, The Better Angels of Our Nature, The Sense of Style, and The Enlightenment Now. How does language work, according to Steven Pinker? There are the words that are the basic components of sentences that are stored in a part of a long-term memory that we can call the mental lexicon or the mental dictionary. There are rules, the recipes, or algorithms that we use to assemble bits of language into more complex stretches of language, including syntax, the rules that allow us to assemble words into phrases and sentences. Morphology, the rules that allow us to assemble bits of words like prefixes and suffixes into complex words. Phonology, the rules that allow us to combine vowels and consonants into the smallest words. And then of this knowledge of language has to connect to the world throughout interfaces that allow us to understand language coming from others to produce language that others can understand us. The language interfaces. Here is a video of how does language work according to Steven Pinker in words.
Let's start with words. The basic principle of the word was identified by the Swiss linguist Ferdinand de Saussure more than 100 years ago when he called attention to the arbitrariness of the sign. Take, for example, the word duck. The word duck doesn't look like a duck or walk like a duck or quack like a duck, but I can use it to get you to think the thought of a duck because all of us at some point in our lives have memorized that brute force association between that sound and that meaning, which means that it has to be stored in memory in some format, in a very simplified form. An entry in the mental lexicon might look something like this. There is a symbol for the word itself. There is some kind of specification of its sound, and there's some kind of specification of its meaning.
Noam Chomsky contributions. Chomsky based his theory on the idea that all languages contain similar structures and rules, and the fact that children everywhere acquire a language the same way and without much effort seems to indicate that we are born wired with the basics already presented in our brains. He posed a novel approach to think about language, called the theory of universal grammar. This integrated theory includes the idea that humans are genetically endowed with knowledge of the linguistic features of which language is composed and the ability to determine how those features are organized into the language they hear around them. Critics to Chomsky. Chomsky has been fantastically influential in the science of language. That doesn't mean that all language scientists agree with him, and there's have been a number of critics of Chomsky over the years. The critics argue Chomsky has not shown that more general-purpose language models, such as neural network models, are incapable of learning language together with all the other things that children learn, and therefore has not proven that there has to be a specific knowledge how the grammar works in order for the child to learn grammar. Phonology is another component of language governs the sound pattern of language, the ways that the vowels and consonants can be assembled into the minimal units that go into words. Phonology is the study of categorical organization of speech sounds in languages, how speech sounds are organized in the minimal and used to convey meaning. There are phonological rules that make adjustments to the sounds, depending on what the other words are. Very few of us realize, for example in English, that the past tense suffix "ed" is actually pronounced in 3 different ways. Pragmatics. So why do people understand language so much better than computers? Well, there is a third interface between language and the rest of the mind, and that is the subject matter of the branch of linguistics called pragmatics, namely how people understand language in context using their knowledge of the world and their expectation about how other speakers communicate. The most important principle of pragmatics is called cooperative principle, namely assumes that your conversational partner is working with you to try to get a meaning across truthfully and clearly. And our knowledge of pragmatics like our knowledge of syntax and phonology and so on, is deployed effortlessly but involves many intricate computations.
Grammar. What is it? Grammar is partly the study of what forms or structures are possible in a language. Traditionally, grammar has been concerned almost exclusively with analysis at the level of the sentence. Thus, a grammar is a description of the rules that govern how a language sentences are formed. In other words, grammar is the study of words, how they are used in sentences, and how they change in different situations. Here is an example of language in use. This is 2680239. We are not at home right now. Please leave a message after the beep. You will recognize it as an answer phone message. This is the kind of text it is. It consists of 3 sentences, which themselves consist of words, and the words, when spoken, consist of sounds. All language in use can be analyzed at each of these 4 levels: text, sentence, word, and sound. These are the forms that language takes. Grammar and its role in meaning-making and communication. Now that we know what is grammar, all that we said has to make sense, and all the words have a meaning, but we have to know how to put the words in order to make sense.
In the last section, the point was made that grammar is partly the study of what forms are possible, but that doesn't explain why the following sounds odd. This is 2680239. We are at home right now. Please leave a message after the beep. The sentence "we are at home right now" is possible. It is grammatically well formed, but it doesn't make sense in this context. The form the speaker has chosen doesn't convey the exact meaning the speaker requires. We now need to consider another feature of grammar, and that's it. Its meaning-making potential. Grammar communicates meaning. Meanings of a very precise kind. Vocabulary, of course, also communicates meaning.
With recent advancements in modern technology, from spell check to Skype, communicating with people is easier now than it has ever been before. But because of these new technologies, many people are starting to wonder, does grammar even matter anymore? I mean, does it even matter if you know the difference between who and whom? Or between there, and there? To answer if grammar matters, we first have to answer another question. What is grammar? According to Wikipedia, grammar is the set of structural rules that governs the composition of clauses, phrases, and words in any given natural language. Whoa. Okay, so what does that even mean? Well, the world we live in is governed by natural laws, and our speech is no different. Whether you know it or not, every time you're talking, you're using those laws in some way. Grammar has defined, albeit loose, laws that we all must adhere to if we want to be understood. When you try to ignore a natural law, things tend to go poorly. For example, if you wanted to ask a girl out on a date, but didn't know the proper rules of grammar, it may come out as, date, go, want, out, me, with. Chances are, if you asked a girl out like that, she would run screaming from you and never look back. Oh well, at least there are always cats. Grammar is the vehicle by which we communicate with the world around us. It allows us to build relationships, share ideas, and even argue in the comments section on YouTube. Grammar is one of the bedrocks of our society, and without it, our world would easily crumble into chaos within a few days. I mean, imagine waking up one morning and all of a sudden nothing you or anyone else said made any sense anymore. I guess what I'm trying to say is, grammar clearly matters. But some people may argue it's not how you say it, it's what you say. And you know what? I would agree with them. While there are certain people that think of grammar as trying to make every sentence sound perfect, that's not what I'm advocating for when I use the term. Many different subcultures have their own dialect that may sound odd, even incoherent to outsiders, but sound perfectly normal to those people in the subculture. Should we stomp on their culture in the name of good grammar? Of course not. To me, grammar is the ability to clearly and effectively communicate your thoughts and ideas to the world around you. And if you can do that in your own lingo, more power to you. So if the world around you looks different than the world around me, that's okay, celebrate that fact, but broaden your horizons. If you know that you're going to have to go into the business world one day, you should understand that you'll have to communicate differently in that world than you would at home. While knowing how to use there, and there correctly might not matter on Facebook, it probably will matter if you're trying to get a job. If you can't eliminate bad grammar or misspellings from your resume or cover letter, how can your future boss expect you to write an error-free report to a client? And how do you think a client feels when they get an email that's full of mistakes? Probably not very confident. Grammar and writing aren't things that should isolate us from our surroundings, they're things that should bring us closer to the people we care about. Grammar isn't about making people feel left out or looked down on just because they don't know how to use a semicolon. Grammar is about so much more than that. Grammar is about connecting people and bringing them together. So the next time someone tells you grammar doesn't matter, politely tell them that they have no idea what they're talking about, and then throw an apple at them. Oh, and has anyone seen my cat?
Types of grammar. There are two common definitions of grammar: the systematic study and description of language. A set of rules and examples dealing with the syntax and word structures of a language, usually in need as an aid to the learning of that language. Descriptive grammar refers to the structure of a language as is actually used by speakers and writers. Prescriptive grammar refers to the structure of a language as certain people think it should be used. Both kinds of grammar are concerned with rules, but in different ways. Specialists in descriptive grammar study the rules or patterns that underlie our use of words, phrases, clauses, and sentences. On the other hand,
Hi, in this video we'll be talking about the two approaches to grammar: prescriptive grammar and descriptive grammar. Sometimes what you hear or read is not exactly what you learned. This is probably because of these two approaches. Let's have a look at them now. Prescriptive grammar is about how the language should be used. Descriptive grammar is about how the language actually is used by adult native speakers. So, prescriptive grammar is taught in school. Prescriptive grammar is mandated by language academies, although there is no academy for English. Prescriptive grammar requires conscious effort on our part to remember and apply. Here we have an example: I versus me. Jake and me are coming to the party too. Now, what does prescriptive grammar say? Prescriptive grammar says, here me is used as subject. Instead, we should use I. Me should be used as object. So, according to prescriptive grammar, the sentence should read, Jake and I are coming to the party too. And now, what does descriptive grammar say? Me is becoming increasingly widespread in subject position. So, according to descriptive grammar, this sentence is okay. Jake and me are coming to the party too. Here's another example. Who versus whom. The woman who I met looked sick. Well, what does prescriptive grammar say? Here, who is used as object. Instead, we should use whom. Who should be used as subject. So, according to prescriptive grammar, the sentence should read, the woman whom I met looked sick. But the descriptive grammar approach says, who is usually used as both subject and object.
why study linguistics? Stevens says that the study of language has many practical applications, including computers that understand and speak, the diagnosis and treatment of language disorders, the teaching of reading, writing, and foreign languages, the interpreting of the language of law, politics, and literature. Thanks for watching this presentation. I hope you like it.